So, I call the talk tonight The Shape of Your Soul. And when I think about the shape of the soul, I immediately think about a little baby. And you know, babies are like little blobs. They're all squishy and malleable, but they're also alive. They're alive with a physical presence. There's a kind of a vibrating presence to a baby. Even when they're sleeping, there's a kind of a palpable physical presence. But babies are also full of potential. Like their whole life is in front of them. So they're squishy and malleable. And then they have to encounter the world. They have to bring what's forward what's inside of them. The needs, the animal drives, the deep human qualities of joy, love, peace, strength, power, and will. And they have to bring those qualities forward into an environment that is holding in various different ways and not holding in other ways. So, for instance, a baby may come into the world with a lot of strength. Some babies come in and they're just little fireballs, and they look at you and there's a different quality. That baby, right? They're alive. They're ready. Now, if the environment, caregivers meet that baby with a kind of a co-excitement and an encouragement of that strength, of that vitality, then the soul of that baby learns, I can move with my strength, I can expand, I can go forward. But if the environment doesn't notice, or is threatened by, or is overwhelmed by that baby's aliveness, that baby's vitality and strength, then the soul starts to get the message, this is not wanted here. And in fact, this is threatening. My aliveness, my vitality, my strength, my expansion is threatening to my environment, which I need to survive. So the soul of the baby starts to dim that strength. And that's a wound. Even as I'm talking about it, you could feel, we know these wounds, right? You could feel that. You feel the energy of the room change a little bit. But what if the baby had a lot of joy? And what if the whole family And everyone was welcoming of that baby's joy. Ha ha ha, the baby's here, full of joy. You're so welcome here. That joy, we love that joy, right? Then the baby's soul stays open to joy, to allowing joy to be here. My soul is okay with joy. And on the other hand, maybe the baby is born into an environment where joy is not acceptable, nor is pleasure, nor is play. Serious environment. What happens to that joy? What happens to the shape of that soul? Dim it down, dumb it down, numb it out, push it back. The soul has an intelligence to feel what's accepted, what's not accepted, and the soul starts to respond. But that response is a shape. That response is a shape that the soul takes, that starts to form the basis of our personality, of who we become. Many qualities this happens for. It happens for the quality of will. Maybe the baby has a lot of capacity to move forward in the world. And either that's received and taken by the hand, or it's pushed away, or it's threatening to the environment. Maybe the baby has a lot of peace. Maybe that peace just isn't seen at all. That just doesn't register. What happens to that soul? How does that soul get shaped? I mean, every baby has some of these qualities that I'm talking about. Some babies are more forward than others in these qualities. Value is a particular quality that, like air, is just within ourselves. When our soul hasn't been changed, when we haven't had to shape ourselves out of our natural state, there's a natural feeling of being of value. Not of value for doing anything or for looking a certain way, but I'm value. Simply being here, I experience value. Baby doesn't think this. It's implicit. It's inherent. And then the baby hears, well, let's compare you to somebody else. Let's compare you to this. Let's compare your achievement. Let's compare your looks. Let's judge you. Right? What happens to the baby's value? What happens to the shape of that soul? Right? Or maybe we puff up and try to prove our value, excel and exceed, and, at the expense of everybody else, right? But are you getting the sense of how the soul is shaping? How we have these things within us. These are essential qualities that I'm talking about, but we also have needs within us. Need food, right? Need care. Need play. Need interaction. Need encouragement. Need mirroring. We have these needs. And our souls are incredibly sensitive, intelligent, perceptive, and malleable, so that we form into what our environment needs us to be. And sometimes that environment can be downright hostile, abusive, startling, intrusive. Okay? Just notice what you're feeling as I'm saying this stuff, right? Take a breath into this, because this is heavy stuff. You know, this is the shape of the soul. The shape that the soul takes. And as the soul takes these shapes, the soul holds them. Because if the soul, the consciousness that we are, which is our soul, the kind of presence, consciousness, beingness that is our soul, if the soul couldn't hold any shape at all, we might just kind of stay blobs. Maybe some things would come through us once in a while, but we might just be kind of blobby. But we take a form. I am so-and-so. We walk into a room. I am so-and-so, or I am so-and-so, or I'm so-and-so. We take a shape and we hold it. But the reason that I'm telling you this, the reason that I'm sharing the way that our souls are shaped, and what's important about this, is that it is blameless. That is the only thing that the soul could do would be responding to its environment and adapting and surviving and trying to come to a form that made the most sense at the time. So again, this hopefully will disabuse us of the notions that we are character-based entities coming in with either good character or bad character, or, good qualities or bad qualities, or you're just this kind of person or that kind of person. Every person is an adaptation of soul. Every person has had to become what they are to survive. You can really kind of say there was no other way. And that's a little tough because some people become pretty rough in a lot of different ways. But the thing is, that's not the end of the story. And this whole series is called Awakening Presence, because the story continues as we start to awaken out of the shape, the rigidity or the chaos of shape that our souls have taken. The story continues into an evolution of our own intelligence that starts to recognize, the soul starts to recognize itself and its own shapes, and it starts to be possible in that recognition And I want to make a point here that the recognition is all about being in contact with oneself. So we'll go back to that meditation where we learn to be in contact with what's really here. Because the recognition comes from contact, from self-contact. So we start to awaken to the shape our soul is taking. And what that means is that we really have to see some tough stuff. We have to see pain. We have to feel pain. We learn to stop and feel what is painful about the shape of our soul. That in itself is very profound. To actually stop and feel the pain of what it is to be in your human life in this moment. So take a breath into that, Feel that. What's here now for you? But the pain also isn't the end of the story. The pain is information. Again, when you come into contact, it may be pain, or it may be rigidity, or it may be numbness, or it may be agitation or anxiety. But when you start to come into contact, you start to feel this is all information. Information about how and where the soul needs to move of its own accord, of its own volition. That's an aspect of awakening. We're awakening out of having a reactive soul that's reacting to the environment, to having a self-reflective soul that's starting to know itself and in an adult way know what its needs are, knows what its drives are, know what it feels like to have the emergence of potential in one direction or another. So, our souls can come alive. That is an awakening. We can catch fire. We can want to know what truth is. We can want to know who we are. We can want to know what's real. And we can do that by coming into contact with ourselves. By listening to ourselves. So the other aspect is in that listening, we start to understand. And listening with the heart, have compassion for the shape that this soul has taken. The soul has taken shape through our histories. And if we begin to get a little grasp psychologically of our history, what we've come from, what we had to leave behind, and then again feeling the wound of that, feeling the loss, feeling the grief, feeling the anger or the rage, or the lostness, or the hopelessness. We start to learn to move through that emotional territory, realizing that that is that's the flotsam and the jetsam of the soul. That's the runoff of our past histories. That's not who we are. Because who we are is that aliveness, that awakeness, that potential, that presence. We are pristine. And that may be the final part to this tonight, is that while we have taken shape, while we have formed, while our bodies and our minds and our habits and our beliefs have all kind of come into what they are by a certain point in our lives, there is something not separate from, but something that's untouched in all that. And that you might call spirit. So you might call that spirit, to differentiate it from the soul that's in the dance of taking shapes, that's in the dance of responding and reacting and holding shapes. There's a ground. There's a source. There's an aliveness that is the earth of the soul. And because of that, you might also call it like the wellspring of the soul. Because of that, our soul can be informed from within. So as we get in contact with ourselves, as we feel ourselves, as we understand ourselves, our dilemmas, our histories, and the way we've taken shape, what we must also do is come in contact with that beingness, with that wellspring, with that ground of our being. Because from that, the soul starts to open from the inside. No longer just responding to the outside, no longer just taking itself as a form, as a body, as a self, as a somebody, but feeling the emergence of the purity of life coming through. And so that, it's interesting, they call it enlightenment. That is the illumination of the soul with the spirit. And no matter how twisted or blocked or rigid the soul becomes, that is the source. Every soul falls back into that. So, your soul is blameless in having taken the shape that it took. No matter what it did or didn't do, no matter what it got right, what it got wrong, it is blameless. It had to take the shape that it took. And it's possible for spirit to awaken into your soul and create a new aliveness and a transformation from deep within. So, the reason for sitting down and doing this talk is the hope that speaking about this gives a flavor of it. Speaking about this gives a taste of it. And that you get some nourishment from that. That your soul can relax a little bit. That it can get a little supple like a baby again for a moment. That some of those things, some of that joy or that aliveness or that wonder can start to come. So I think that's about it.